and welcome to Live and Invest Overseas YouTube channel. I am Kat Kalashian, and I am joined once again by our good friend in Belize, Sharon Lord. We recently got a question, actually, on one of our prior Belize videos. Thank you very much for your engagement. What are some of the differences or similarities between Ambergris Caye and Placencia, two very different locations in Belize? The pros and cons, which are best for vacation rental earnings, and if you're the owner, where would you be looking to make an investment if you're not looking actually as a resident, but as just an investment owner? Which one has more expats? Which one draws more expats? And any tips that we can provide on that. And luckily for us, Sharon is in a perfect position to tell us about this, as her husband, Nathan, works in vacation rentals and property management in Belize. So he's had some great, very real, quantifiable insights into this question. Sharon, do you want to introduce yourself quickly and let us know what you're doing down there in Belize?
Sure. So Nathan and I moved to San Pedro August of 2024 after visiting for over 10 years. The home that we live in now actually was a vacation rental. Now we live here, or live in it. So we've seen the rental pros and cons, and we both have a real estate background when we lived in Phoenix. So this is like my topic. I'm excited about this one.
It's great. All right. So the first question, where do the expats go? Or I guess the first foreigner related question, where do the expats go? Obviously, Belize is a draw from north to south, east to west, but is there one of these two places that we're talking about that sees more expats on a long-term basis?
Percentage wise, pretty close. You have both of them draw expats due to the proximity to the ocean, gorgeous weather. I mean, this is what I wear year round.
Right. This is your life every day.
Right. Welcoming locals, and both have an airport for ease of travel. Not the international airport. You still have to take a puddle jumper to either Placencia or Ambergris Caye, but the availability to get there directly via flight makes it a great draw for expats from around the world. The biggest difference between the two areas is the scale. Ambergris Caye, San Pedro is our town on the island. It's the top tourist destination in Belize. It's a bustling, busy city. The island has about 22,000 people from a 2024 census. San Pedro, it's your most well-known, well-traveled area in the country. Because it's an island, you'll have a little bit higher cost of living. On the flip side, there's also a high rental demand. Looking at Placencia, there's the village, and then there's also the peninsula. The peninsula is about 16 miles north to south. It actually has 3 different cities on it. But if you're talking the Placencia village itself, it only has about 2,600 residents in the village. So much, much smaller. You're talking like 10% of the population of what San Pedro has. It's a small fishing village, very walkable. Hardly any cars, a lot of golf carts, a lot of bikes, a lot of pedestrians. They call it the island you can drive to because it is literally just, half mile wide, 16 feet long. So it feels like an island. You can still access it via, car if you wanted to. Placencia is very popular for honeymooners as well. So both are, but Placencia specifically seems to draw more of the honeymoon crowd.
Would this be local honeymooners or foreigners coming in?
A lot of international. Definitely a big international draw, although,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so this person is also asking about the pros and the cons, which you've kind of gone over. So I guess to summarize quickly on what you've said already, Ambergris Caye is definitely the tourist haven, which means it's going to have higher prices, but also higher rental yields. So if you're looking at this from the perspective of an investor, Ambergris Caye, San Pedro is probably more of a straightforward kind of bet. Whereas Placencia is a little bit on the path of progress.
Playing the numbers.
Right. Yeah. So definitely fewer visitors, fewer people living there, but potentially, especially if it's already seeing honeymooners, potentially a place that will see a big appreciation in future years. Although, nobody can say for sure.
Nothing's ever guaranteed, but trends are going that direction.
Right. So can you give us any other pros and cons about these two destinations?
Absolutely. Ambergris Caye, you're going to have a wider diversity of potential properties, from basic shelter up to millionaires compounds. You have all of the tourism industry. So for short-term rentals, the ability to hop on a boat for fishing or snorkeling or diving, going parasailing, going to the mainland. There's a ton of tour companies, so it's very tourism friendly. And it's reachable by puddle jumper or the water taxi being much more affordable. So that gives people that are more on a budget for their vacation an option to get here without spending, 170 US for a 15-minute flight each way.
Right, right.
I would say the cons of the island, you have a little more competition with rentals. Because it's an island, it's a little more difficult and expensive to get supplies for, housing repairs or other supplies. It does have less natural beach than Placencia. We have a lot of seawalls just due to beach erosion, with the exception of the west side of the island where secret beach is, but that's off grid. So you kind of have to balance out those two. Corona commercial water versus having to be off grid.
So correct me if I'm mistaken, but Ambergris is also where the coral reef is, right? And is it the second largest in the world?
Second largest. The Mesoamerican reef is only smaller than the Great Barrier Reef in Australia.
Right.
And it's less than a mile offshore for us. So it's, 5 minutes on a boat and you're there. So super accessible to get to the, dive sites and snorkel sites.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What about fishing? Sorry, this is a little bit off topic, but when you're on Ambergris, is everything protected or are you able to go fishing there? I know a lot of people interested in the Caribbean and in the tropics, they're interested in fishing. So thought I'd throw it in there.
Oh yeah. So fishing, one of the top draws, when you look at the micro segments of tourism, fly fishing is huge. There are 3 fish that are catch and release. That's permit, bonefish, and tarpon. Everything else you can keep. You can cook, you can eat. Your fishing tour guides will clean it for you, put it in a baggie, and you take it to a restaurant and they'll cook it for you that same night. It's unbelievable. So fishing is definitely a big draw.
Okay. So let's compare then Ambergris to Placencia. We've gone over some of the pros and cons of Ambergris. What about Placencia?
So Placencia, has that small town quaint feel to it. It has your traditional sandy beaches like you picture for the Caribbean, or, a lot more of them. You have the ease of exploring the mainland. So if you have tourists that want to go to Mayan ruins or go to the Belize or, do a Garifuna, food tour, all that is easily drivable. Whereas on the island, you're going to have to take that puddle jumper or water taxi. So it makes, it adds that extra step and expense. Mm-hmm. So much easier to do mainland tours from Placencia. It's the only place in Belize that you can drink water from the tap, which may not sound like much, but living on the island, every 3 days we have to drive to the store with our empty 5-gallon jugs and get them refilled. And, it's just that extra hassle. Whereas in Placencia, it's safe to drink water right from the tap. And I don't know if really anywhere else in Central America that's the case. So they have a great water purification system. So those little things that make a big difference.
Yeah, that's one I've never heard before. I've spent a lot of time on the mainland, mostly in the Caye. And I guess I'm not remembering the fact that I would have had to have bottled water the whole time. So that's pretty funny. I find it funny just that there's only one town, like how are there not towns around it?
Right.
So that's very
interesting. Perks of part, we'll take it.
Right, exactly.
For cons for Placencia, less homes. Obviously, less homes means less inventory to purchase and less variety of properties. Because it is a smaller village, it may be too slow for some. So whether you're living there or you're looking at it as a rental, it's going to be a slower pace. So you just have to be prepared for that. To get to Placencia, you're pretty much looking at a puddle jumper. So it's a little more expensive. There's not a water taxi option. If you were to take a car, it's about 2 hours and 45 minutes, assuming the roads are clear and good. There's been a lot of rain, might take you longer or might be impassable. So, just something to keep in mind. Placencia gets considerably more rain per year. We're talking 104 inches on average, give or take, versus the island gets about 67. So when you're talking about almost 4 extra feet of rain, that obviously can mean more rain out days, possible flooding. So just something to keep in mind as you compare the two.
Right. And keep the infrastructure in mind. That might not seem like a big difference wherever you're living right now, but when drainage isn't necessarily an assured thing or when a storm could bring down a tree. So this last time I was in the Caye, I drove from Belize City into San Ignacio. And there had been a storm the night before. A tree had fallen down on the highway highway is it's a two-way road, but the tree completely blocked this road, which meant we had to off-road it, in a four-wheel drive to go around on dirt roads. I mean, this is the reality of living in Belize, is that there are very few paved roads. There are exactly 4 highways. And if something happens to one of those highways, then you've got to hoof it, in whatever way that means. So, right, although that might not to you seem like a huge difference, you have to keep in mind the level of infrastructure that we're talking about in Belize, which will be very charming and endearing to one kind of person and will be an absolute nightmare to another. So know yourself, know what you would like and dislike, and be honest with yourself when it comes to thinking about moving overseas. Belize is a place to go off grid. It is not a place to come for the cutting edge technology. Okay, so let's get into some of the numbers that you pulled, the really fun nitty gritty stuff that you pulled from your husband's archives. What, as an investor, would you be looking at in either place?
Hello, my fellow number nerds. Let's look at the numbers and really get into it. So there's a professional subscription-based rental analytics website, and that's what we pulled the numbers from. And it's based on currently active revenue generating properties. So if you go on Airbnb, you may see more or less properties than the numbers I'm about to quote you. These are ones that there's actual data that we can call from. For Island, Ambergris Caye, and San Pedro specifically, they give a submarket score on a scale of 100, and it gets an 88, which is really good. They show 350 vacation rentals. 81% of those are 1 or 2 bedroom properties. So know if you look at a 1 or 2 bedroom, you're going to have a lot of competition. Of note, they are not yet tracking very far north of the bridge. So our island, you have town, and then there's the bridge, and then north of the bridge, there's, 18 to 20 miles of island. A lot of it's undeveloped and up and coming, but there are rental properties there that aren't hitting these numbers yet in the rental market. They are showing an average annual occupancy for those short-term rental properties of 58%. Understand that we have seasons here. We have dry season, wet season, high season, low season. So low season is typically going to be, beginning of June through roughly Thanksgiving. You'll get some rentals. You won't get a lot. You'll have to have a lower rent just because there's less people traveling. It's summer back in the States and Canada. A lot of people are, doing local vacations or enjoying the good weather. High season is when they don't want to be in snow and cold and, mess with reasons why you would want to travel here. The average annual revenue on the island is $45,100 US. So pretty good. When we look at Placencia, and I did the village specifically, so the in-town area, you're looking at a submarket score of 89. So 1 point higher than San Pedro. Not a big difference there. Both great areas for short-term rental properties. They show 151 vacation rentals versus the 350.
Right. So less than half.
Right. However, keep in mind, there's more vacation rentals per capita, meaning you're going to have a more transient population. A higher percentage of the people that are in the village are going to be short-term renters. So if you are moving there with, you want to set down roots and have a family and live life there, just know that there are going to be a lot of people in and out just because a larger percentage are there on vacation. 86% of the units are 1 or 2 bedroom, whereas on the island it was 81. So again, high numbers. For occupancy, Placencia is seeing a 52% occupancy per year versus the island was 58. So, minor, not a big difference there. The average annual revenue is 42,500 US versus the 45,100. So again, I think either way,
it's very
strong numbers, good rental pool, good market.
Yeah, I'm
very, very close
at the comparability. I would have thought that Ambergris would show much, much higher everything versus Placencia. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, I was shocked because San Pedro and Ambergris Caye is like the tourist destination.
That's the place, right?
Yeah.
All right, wrapping things up, are there any last minute or insider tips, last thoughts you'd like to give on anybody from the investor or the vacationer side of things?
Absolutely. If you're looking at an investment property, know that beachfront and or units with a private pool are going to rent first. So, just think about when you go on vacation, what are you looking for? Amenities. If you're going to a tropical island, you want to be on the beach. As I said, our villa that we live in now was in the rental pool. We're on lagoon, but it still did well because at least it has a water view. Obviously the folks that want the crystal blue water are going to pay more to be on the ocean itself. But just, if you can get anywhere on the water, it will really help your amount of rentals that come in. Know that if you value price, you'll get more rentals. Obviously, if it's more affordable, it's available to a wider pool of potential tenants. Just know that, more rentals mean more wear and tear. So you may have, more broken dishes over the course of the year, or, have to replace some sheets or bedding or whatever. So it's always that delicate balance when you're setting your pricing between, you don't want to underprice it to where you're booked all the time and leaving money on the table. But you don't want to be so high that you're not getting any bookings.
Mm-hmm.
So work with your property manager, and, even trial and error can help kind of figure out where you should be on your nightly rental rate. Placencia, if you're going to do a 1 or 2 bedroom, knowing that they have a big draw for honeymooners, I would focus on properties that have like a concierge level of service, high-end properties that are private. If you're on your honeymoon, you don't want to, be in a super crowded, loud, family setting. You want to be like romantic and, having that experience. So
if you're very good point. Right. If that's the market coming to Placencia, don't invest in like a playground on your property.
Right. Know your audience and, cater to them. Both markets have very few rentals that are 3-bedroom or larger. I follow a lot of YouTubers that are real estate agents, and they break down the percentages of units for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-bedroom units, and in both of these markets, hardly any that are 3-bedroom and up. So that's really an untapped market. And when I look at those rentals, I see they are booked, so much more than 1 and 2-bedroom.
Really?
If you think about it, a 1-bedroom could be a hotel room. So
do you think these would be families coming, like multi-generational vacations, or lots of friends, like a big friend group? Do you know if the market is one way or the other, or both?
It's really split. We've come down where we've brought, my in-laws, my husband's sister and her kids, and, then our kids. So we're looking at 9 or 10 people. It's awesome to have one home where we can all hang out, but have our own separate space. We've also done it in a hotel where we had that same feel, that same togetherness. We see a lot of like bachelorette parties down here, family reunions. So when you start thinking about all the reasons that people might go on vacation, there's a lot that involve larger groups of people.
Right.
So if you can cater to them, you'll get many more bookings. You'll be much more consistently booked.
Yeah, that's a fantastic tip, because if it's a market that's not being catered to now, and if you have the ability to tailor, if you're buying a piece of property and you're looking to build your own home, which I know Sharon has a lot of experience in, and we will talk about in future videos. But right, if you're able to work that into your long-term plan in Belize, that sounds like for an investor, it sounds like a slam dunk. So great piece of advice there.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're gonna do a build from the ground up, do 3-bedroom, 3-bath, or 4-bedroom, 4, so that it's almost like having individual suites for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do loft house, then you have the flexibility of you can rent half the home if you only need 2 bedrooms, or you can rent the whole home if you need 4. So having that flexibility always helps.
That's great. And I know you actually mentioned that you have some personal experience with your own home being rented out.
Yeah. So our villa, it's basic, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Maybe 1,500 square feet. It's not super updated, but being on the water, our villa, it was ranked number 10 in the country for revenue in its first year.
Oh my
God. Because it's a 3-bed. Yeah. I was like, holy cow.
Like, if you know what you're doing, you can really plunk yourself into this market.
Right. But it's a 3-bedroom home. It's standalone, and we priced it affordably. So a larger pool of potential renters again.
So can I ask, what was your rental figure?
Yeah. So our low rate was $170 a night. And then during holidays, we were closing in on that like $270, $280 a night rental. But when you think about, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home without, 8 other attached units, it's like that's really a value price.
Yeah, definitely.
So, unfortunately, we moved into the villa. Yeah, we moved into the villa in August, so we didn't rent from August on forward, but we were tracking to make about $50,000 before expenses. So, it was a great investment for us.
Yeah,
and
it's a nice sideline of income. Yeah.
Right.
All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, final words, best advice for anybody looking to move or invest in either of these two places. Final words.
Absolutely. So my best advice if you're looking at Placencia versus San Pedro is, go to both. See which feels more like an area you would want to live in or you would want to vacation in. Both are tropical tourism destinations, but with very different paces. So you have to be comfortable. I think when you believe in your investment, that kind of is fed through and people feel it and they want to enjoy the home just like you would. So, definitely look at both. And if you're comfortable with it, go for it. Like it's a great place to live, a great place to own investment property.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We will hear a lot more from Sharon in the future, but thank you so much for joining us today, Sharon, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.